So yeah, Bloober Team has been pretty busy lately. Silent Hill 2 Remake last year, Chronos and New Dawn last week, and they are currently working on at least 2 more upcoming horror games that we know about, Silent Hill 1 Remake and Project M, which is for the Switch. From the indie studio that became famous for creating immersive horror walking simulators to developing some of the best modern survival horror games, Bloober Team has really come a long way. So on this episode of Nerd Games, and in honor of the recent release of Bloober Team's newest horror game, today I'll be ranking every single Bloober Team horror game from worst to best. Before we get started though, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel for more survival horror content. Also hit that like button if you enjoyed today's topic. Finally, this video is officially sponsored by G Fuel, so if you're looking for ways to support the channel, consider picking up your favorite tub of G Fuel using the link below or the code Games at checkout to save up to 20% off your next order. Anyway, my name is Ruben with Nerd Games, and this is every Bloober Team horror game ranked from worst to best. Let's get it. Number 6, Blair Witch. I'm of the mindset that Bloober Team doesn't really have any bad horror games, but rather they have unique experiences that are tailored to different players with different preferences. For example, I'm a fan of immersive horror games with unique atmospheres and environments or addicting gameplay mechanics. Unfortunately, in the case of Blair Witch, we don't really get any of that. Whereas other Bloober Team horror games feature unique gameplay mechanics, an atmosphere complete with a one-of-a-kind setting that blows our minds away, or an addicting combat and or puzzle solving features, Blair Witch isn't any of that. The setting of being lost in the woods, while it does create tension and a feeling of loneliness, doesn't feel as unique as other set pieces in Bloober Team's library. There are no puzzles at all, and while Bullet, your dog, is a fun companion, he really doesn't add too much to the gameplay side of things compared to other Bloober Team games. There are really only 2 things I do give Blair Witch credit for. One, it's definitely scarier than a lot of the Bloober Team games out there, mainly due to the fear of the unknown as the Blair Witch stalks you in the woods. And 2, the story is decent and features an interesting twist that connects to the lore of Blair Witch. But all in all, Blair Witch is just not a great game for me personally, and in comparison to everything else Bloober Team gave us, it's easily my least favorite Bloober Team horror game. Number 5, The Medium. The Medium is unfortunately not only Bloober Team's most disappointing horror game, but it's also on my list for most disappointing horror games of all time. Sure, part of the reason for that was because I allowed myself to be extremely hyped about this game leading up to its release. I mean, it was being marketed as a modern day Silent Hill game, which is kind of ironic now when you think about it. But yeah, unfortunately, while there were definitely some interesting mechanics, features, and visuals in the Medium that really impressed me, most of the game failed to meet my expectations. There was little to no gameplay despite it being marketed as a survival horror game, as the Medium felt almost identical to Bloober Team's traditional walking simulators, but in third person. The game lacked the same scare factor that was featured in previous games by the studio, and even the puzzles felt pretty simplistic in comparison to most horror games out there. The story was also very predictable and honestly kinda bland and boring. The Medium wasn't all bad though. The unique feature of being able to move through the real world and the supernatural world at the same time was a pretty cool mechanic that was visually impressive to experience. In fact, this mechanic is one of the biggest things that elevates this game higher than Blair Witch, as it created a unique experience that felt unlike any other horror game out there. The atmosphere and environment were top notch, as you would expect from Bloober Team, and while the game lacked in most departments, the Medium definitely knocked it out of the park with its set design and visually striking worlds in both realities of the game. Number 4, Observer. Horror meets cyberpunk in this sci-fi horror game. Observer might very well be the most unique horror game developed by Bloober Team, as it has a completely different vibe and aesthetic compared to most of the games in their catalog. This game is heavily inspired by cyberpunk, and both the gameplay and environments uses that inspiration to create a one-of-a-kind experience. From the gameplay side of things, it's very similar to what Bloober Team is known for: horror walking simulators with immersive environments. However, it does it with a futuristic sci-fi vibe to it, and it also adds some stealth horror to it as well, something you didn't really get in games like Blair Witch and Layers of Fear. While it's still a horror walking simulator for the most part, Observer adds this cyberpunk noir vibe to the game as well that puts the player into the shoes of a detective solving mysteries. Meaning you'll have to examine environments, use your tools, and even hack the minds of people to solve the many different mysteries that you come across in the game. It adds a different element to the game that you don't normally see with Bloober Team, and the futuristic cyberpunk aesthetic makes Observer one of the most unique looking horror games ever created. Number 3, Layers of Fear. Before I get started with this next entry, it's worth noting that I decided to include every single chapter of the Layers of Fear series as a single entry. This includes the original game, the DLC, the second game, and even the remake, which also features a new story as well. Yeah, that's kind of confusing, but bear with me. Anyways, while each of these stories are different and some of the gameplay mechanics change over time, the core essence of Layers of Fear is pretty much present in each chapter. Anyway, the franchise follows different protagonists as they each deal with their traumatic past in some pretty disturbing ways. Whether that be a painter trying to recreate a painting finding of his deceased wife, or an actor filming a movie with a mysterious director. Each of the stories throws the characters and the player into terrifying manifestations of their fears and nightmares. Since these games are basically the definition of horror walking simulators, Layers of Fear is definitely not for everybody. These experiences lack in gameplay, but instead make up for that with their atmospheric immersion that creates a haunting yet beautiful world to explore that leaves you terrified from start to finish. Layers of Fear is almost completely built around this atmospheric horror vibe, making the experience one of the most immersive horror walking simulators out there. Layers of Fear also tells a deep story with twists and turns in each entry, with exploration being recommended as it'll lead you to finding more files and fleshing out the entire story before you. Again, these games are not for everybody, and some of the stories are better than others, with the Painter story being my personal favorite by a long shot. But for those of you that appreciate immersive horror walking simulators, yeah, Layers of Fear is one of the best out there. Number 2, Chronos: The New Dawn. We finally arrive at the newest Bloober Team horror game and my personal favorite horror game of the year thus far, Chronos: The New Dawn. Released just last week, Chronos: The New Dawn is Bloober Team's second shot at sci-fi horror, but their first time exploring action horror complete with the sci-fi vibe. Essentially, Chronos: The New Dawn is Bloober Team's take on Dead Space. This game is phenomenal, and I highly recommend it to anybody that likes Dead Space, Resident Evil 4, and honestly, any action horror game. While the combat may not be as smooth as other modern action horror games or survival horror games, it is unique thanks to your arsenal, abilities, and most importantly, the monsters. See, in this game you fight an alien zombie-like species that merges with other corpses. When they do, they become even stronger, and it adds a new layer of fear as you now have to worry about these monsters becoming too powerful to bring down with your limited resources. Speaking of which, Chronos: The New Dawn doesn't shy away from embracing the survival horror side of things, as you'll constantly find yourself running out of resources. Chronos might not be as scary as other entries on today's list, but the combat and gameplay side of things are easily the best that Bloober Team has to offer. It's extremely addicting to play as a traveler and completely annihilate hordes of monsters that come running at you with different tools at your disposal, from torches used to incinerate them to sticky grenades, and a charge mechanic on your gun that'll make each shot even more powerful. All in all, Chronos: The New Dawn is a fantastic game, and if you want to hear more about my thoughts on it, check out my review on it. Number 1, Silent Hill 2 Remake. While Silent Hill 2 Remake might not be an original IP by Bloober Team, they definitely made it their own by creating one of the best modern psychological horror games of all time. I absolutely love this game, and there are parts of this remake that are better than the original. Seriously, Bloober Team took everything from the original game and improved on most aspects of it, while also adding to the game, including more expansive areas, an explorable Silent Hill, and much more. When it comes to Silent Hill 2 Remake, this game features all the best parts of every Bloober Team game thus far. It has a combat system that provided the foundation for the gameplay used in Chronos: The New Dawn. The puzzles are top notch, easily some of the most challenging puzzles out there in horror games. The atmospheric setting was perfection here, with Bloober Team creating tense areas in both the fog world and the nightmare reality. In fact, we got to see more differences between these realities compared to the original game. One of my favorite examples of this is the differences between Woodside and Blue Creek apartment buildings. The characters are fleshed out, the story is extremely loyal to the source material, and the monster designs are just as terrifying as the original game. I really can't say too many bad things about Silent Hill 2 Remake, as this game is a 10 out of 10 for me, and it's definitely Bloober Team at their best. It's actually because of how well Bloober Team handles Silent Hill 2 Remake that I'm beyond hyped about Silent Hill 1 Remake now, and I can't wait to see how they tackle that game next. Will it top Silent Hill 2, or will Silent Hill 2 remain as Bloober Team's best horror game of all time? Time will tell. But yeah, that does it for this episode of Nerd Space Games. Hit up the comments and let me know what you think of my list. Which horror game do you think is Bloober Team's best game yet? Do you agree with me, or do you think it's something other than Silent Hill 2? Let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more survival horror content. Also leave a like on today's video if you enjoyed today's topic. But thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerd Space Games. Take care.